Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode, we're taking a look at the top decks to climb with in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. This is, honestly, it's kind of been a while since we've done one of these, and with a lot of the previous formats, quote-unquote, they've felt very similar. This is the first time I really feel like there's been a big shakeup, and it's worth actually talking about. So let's quickly go through just what I'm expecting to be at the top, and what I'm not. First off, the tiers, we have tier 1, which is basically expecting to see a lot of this in, like, the rating duels and stuff like that, right? Really top tier. Tier 2 is, like, expected to get to Master 1 fairly effectively. Tier 3 is you're going to have some struggle, but realistically still going to be able to effectively get to Master 1 and still compete within the metagame. And then Rogue is, like, you have to be a dedicated player of this deck, more or less, in order to see success with it, and therefore get to that Master 1 tier, and then everything else is kind of everything that I'm not really expecting to do pretty much anything in the current metagame. And let's start off with Branded. Branded, I feel like, is the quintessential rogue deck. Now, that may seem kind of strange, given the fact that it consistently does well in, like, rating duels and all of that stuff, but as I stated previously, this deck is a deck that you basically have to play solely branded in order to see results. And pretty much no other player tends to see results with it unless they are specifically playing branded and only ever branded. Not necessarily due to complexity, but more so due to the fact that it just takes so long for you to end up getting that luck factor that Konami gives to you as a branded player. Branded players always draw insanely well, but if you are not a branded specific player, you will draw like shit. It's pretty much just that. So, yeah, I feel like I can't move branded above Rogue at this point. It only ever shows up, like, once in every, like, 20,000 games, and the player is entirely just given the mandate of heaven and said, pop off, king. Rarely does it seem otherwise. Next up, Kashira. Kashira, I actually think I'm going to put into tier 3. Mostly due to the fact that having a giant macrocosmos as well as, like, unicorn just existing makes it very simple and very easy to climb, right? It's not the best of the decks, but the fact that it pairs so well against a lot of the current metagame, as well as even the newer stuff that we're going to talk about, makes it significantly better, right? Lots of people are going to be playing those one-ofs in the extra deck, which means that being able to snipe them is very useful. On top of that, there's a lot of, like, continuous spells and stuff like that running around that you can snipe with things like Fenris, which makes them a lot stronger, right? You also have, like, all of the like the Fiendsmith stuff, which really wants to be in the grave, and just tons of stuff like that. I feel like overall fairly decent. This may be blasphemous, but I mean, let's be honest. Yeah. Next up, White Forest, or more specifically, White Forest Azamina stuff. Right? This deck is maybe one of the best decks still. It didn't really receive too big of a nerf. However, it did receive a notable nerf. That being said, this is a deck you can genuinely just log on with and basically flip coins and be like, cool, am I going to win? I won the coin flip, we win the duel, move on from there, right? This deck has a very good matchup into pretty much everything, can just kind of blow through everything through just the sheer amount of power that it produces from, like, one card resolving. And just overall, I think that it is one of these, it's probably the strongest current meta or combo deck in the metagame, even more so than some of the other ones that we'll talk about in a second. I feel like this just does the most, and that makes it quite powerful. I don't think it's the best deck, but I think it's up there. Melodious. Melodious, I think, is a solid tier 3 option. I think it's very underrepresented, but I do think that it's very strong, just in general, right? Its biggest weaknesses are the Maxi and Fool loss, obviously, but outside of those in particular, it doesn't really lose to any hand trap singly. It has really sticky end boards, which makes it a difficulty to deal with. I don't think it's great, but I do think it's fairly good. Maybe I will move this down. I don't know. I just really don't think Branded is all that good, but maybe I'll just move it up. Because I do think it's better than Melodious, but I feel like Melodious isn't necessarily Rogue. I just really don't like Branded. Next up, we have Goblin Biker. Goblin Biker received a few additional cards. They're not... did they already have all of their other cards? No, I think they did just receive Grand Goblin Breakout or something else of that nature. But basically, Rank 3 Turbo is not really all that impressive. It's decent. It ends on some powerful end boards. It's very good into other XYZ decks, which there aren't a ton of, which is the main issue as to why I think the Goblins are not that great. In Ryziel meta, this will probably pop up a little bit higher, but overall, it's just doing like the same thing that other combo decks are currently doing, but just doing it worse, right? So it still has the same weaknesses as like Melodious or Azamina Snake Eye or what have you, and when everyone is preparing for those decks, that makes this deck in particular significantly worse, yada yada. Moving on, we have Adamantipator, which has received a big boost in the fact that Block Dragon is now back, and alongside the Millennium stuff, you are able to use any Songjin or, I guess, Temple into Songjin. No, I don't think that does it. Temple with another name. Access to Temple and another name, basically. To allow you to basically just do full Adamantipator combo, which is kind of silly. On top of that, you can play like a big Monster Mash version of the deck alongside things like the Super Heavy Samurais and what have you to just end on a stupidly ridiculous end board because Konami doesn't know how to balance this game in the slightest. Next up, Chimera. Chimera, I think, is, I don't know, rogue. I really have very little faith in this deck. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a deck that exists. Yeah, I don't really have anything to say about this. Next up, we have Tenpai. Tenpai, I still believe, is like tier 1, even post the limitation of the quick play, Song and Kaimin. And the simple fact of the matter is, a best of 1 Tenpai deck has, first of all, it has access to the ability to, in a best of 1, kind of sneak up on the opponent and not really tell them what you're playing, which means you don't have games 2 and 3 to kind of like side deck against them or prepare for them or like make a specific end board to beat them or what have you, so you just end up getting clowned on by the insane hand that they are able to produce pretty much every time. And 2, you could just play the Sky Striker stuff in order to give you access to additional cards. Just seeing extra advantage makes it significantly easier to just see your plays and go off from there. All right, next up we have ourselves the Mathmech Circular, which is, or more specifically just Mathmech in general. I really don't feel like this deck is all that worthwhile. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, it dies to everything else. It's not really good. The biggest downside, I would say, to this deck right now is the fact that Bestials are actually pretty good into the metagame with Fiendsmith running around, so that just kind of deals with all of the actual interaction from Mathmech. So, oops. Yeah, that's like one of the biggest things. On top of that, it's another big combo deck that dies to the same things that every other combo deck does, and it doesn't really do anything in particular that like these other combo decks don't, right? It doesn't put up an insane end board like Adamantipator, and it's just as susceptible to a bunch of other interactions, right? Droll, Nibiru, the Fuwalos, Maxi, etc., right? Clear World got cards. Do they do anything? No. Moving on. We have Birds. Birds, I really think just at this point they're just like dead. I don't see them doing anything. I really don't see them ever doing anything unless you're gonna like floodgate your opponent, which isn't consistent. So there you go. We have Fiendsmith on here. This, I guess you could classify as like any sort of like Fiendsmith focused variant. So like Fiendsmith, Magical Musketeer, or you could say like Fiendsmith Primite could technically be on here as a variation. But like overall, the Fiendsmith engine is like tier 0. It's insanely good even post Beatrice ban, just giving you access to things like Desiree or Wave King Caesar or Apollosa, because for some reason Konami forgot that card exists, or what have you. Realistically, this card's still absolutely insane, or these cards are still absolutely insane, and still provide an insane advantage, but as decks focused on them, they're significantly weaker. So, all in all, still very strong, but not insane. Speaking of which, Primite I'm also going to throw into tier 2. Now, this is interesting because, well, okay. The Primite engine, like, is extremely strong, and I think is going to make almost any deck that can or is willing to play these cards very good. That being said, I would say it's probably not as good as like a deck itself or a deck centered around specifically Primite. I think you need an additional thing. But again, you can play like Primite Fiendsmith. I'm just going to put it in tier 2 for now, but yeah, these are kind of where the engines are going to go. Next up, we have Exodia, or more specifically Millennium. Millennium is just kind of like the best version of Stun right now, where you basically, you know, activate Onk and then like set Macrocosmos and pass. It's pretty good. It's not insane, but it's pretty good. A lot of decks can't really deal with that, and it's just like one of the best versions of Stun. I'm just going to talk about Stun as well. Stun is extremely good right now, mostly due to the fact that with every deck currently just doing these big wombo combos, they're not really able to play anti-stun cards as much because you need the cards to beat the top meta decks, which means Stun winning the coin flip, and even sometimes not winning the coin flip, can just like immediately win the game by like flipping a floodgate and just preventing the opponent from really doing anything, right? So there's a lot of stuff like that. Also, Tenpai is like still relatively common, which means that even in a world post like Beatrice ban, there's still a good chance you come up against a Tenpai player, which just is like an auto win, right? Not entirely, but like almost, right? Next up, we have our FTK, the Gimmick Puppet FTK. I really don't think that this is a great deck with which to climb. I know that it technically has a fairly good win rate in Master Duel, but I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that once people see the combo start, they just immediately scoop. But realistically, I feel like the higher up in the ranks you go, the less likely that is to happen, and the more likely you are to just get hand trapped and then immediately stopped, right? There are a lot of ways to prevent that from like killing you, but I think there's also a lot of ways that you can just be like stopped in your entirety, right? Droll, Nibiru, things like that are more common nowadays, especially Droll in particular, I think is fairly common. So all in all, I feel like this deck is not exceptional. It's never really been exceptional. It might have a high win rate, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it is actually doing all that well. That sounds really weird, but like I think just due to representation and the way that people play into this deck, I feel like it gets a higher win rate than necessarily it should, right? Next up, Runic. Now, if we're talking about Runic Stun, I think it's just the weaker version of Stun, and a lot of that has to do with the simple fact that it doesn't really do a lot into a wide variety of decks. It's good into specific decks, but its inconsistency holds it back. That being said, if we're talking about Runic combo variants, I think it is even weaker, just due to the simple fact that, again, there's not a whole lot of Runic cards available. So, for the most part, we'll just put it at like the top of tier 3. I still think it's decent, but yeah, it's not insane. Rescue Base is fine. It's a nice combo deck, but it doesn't really do anything too special right now. Being able to set 4 and pass is strong, but not insane. It's still able to put up a similar end board that it did previously, but with the power level of the decks just getting higher and higher, and more starters and more extenders and all of that jazz, it's just falling quickly. Pendulum exists and does stuff and isn't really going to be doing a whole lot more outside of that simple stuff, which is you don't play hand traps and you just play like full wombo combo shenanigans. Realistically, I don't think it's bad. I think you can climb with it, but I just feel like you're better off playing one of the other myriad of other combo decks, right? Like play White Forest. Next up, we have Infernoble, which I really just don't have any faith in right now. Yeah, it's a combo deck in a meta full of combo decks and decks specifically designed to beat combo decks, and it really is susceptible to almost everything. Unlike things like Adamancipator or even, you know, Branded, right? There's just not as much that you can do, right? If Isold gets stopped, you're just kind of cooked. A lot of times you can't even get to Isold if your opponent, like, just decides to fire a hand trap. Sometimes you're just cooked, right? Tier Limits I still think is fairly good right now. There's not really an incentive to play this deck in particular. Again, it's just kind of another combo deck, but it is more of a like high roll style combo deck, which at that point You can play a myriad of other things that end on stronger boards. But the difference is that Tier Limit has the capability of playing through end boards fairly effectively, except for the fact that Tier Limit can't do that right now with the power level of the current metagame. I'm going to put it... I think it's still stronger than probably Stun. I'll put it at the top of Tier 3. This is probably like one of the worst metas for it right now. Yeah. Labyrinth, I think, is very good into the current metagame, mostly due to the fact that it is playing on a different axis than pretty much everything else, which gives it a big boon in a best-of-1 format. No one is necessarily prepared for specifically Labyrinth. They may be prepared for Stun, but Labyrinth has the ability to play on the, on the opponent's turn with things like Arius or the other furnitures like Chandelier and Sophie Torby, as well as having the ability to just set for and pass. Both of which are very good, both of which have different, different boons and different bonuses and stuff like that. It doesn't die to any particular hand trap, like it doesn't care about Droll, it doesn't care about Nibiru, two things that really are problematic right now for a bunch of other decks. It doesn't care about Maxi or Fuwalos. I don't think it's insane. I don't think its end boards are not beatable, and the thing is, you're playing a control deck into a very heavy combo style metagame, where if the opponent is able to just drop one of their cards and have it resolve, you're kind of cooked, because they just generate so much advantage off of that. But with that being said, if they don't have the ability to let that resolve or generate the advantage that it needs to, Labyrinth just easily cooks them through the advantage that it gains. That being said, not the best, but very strong still. I'm also going to put Voiceless Voice fairly high. I think it's just better in what it ends on. It's a very difficult end board to beat. Yes, you can hand trap it, you can slow it down, all of that stuff, but it does play well into a lot of these like more like engine focused combo decks with less hand traps, right? Like Adamantipator and Tier Limit and stuff like that. Well, Tier Limit, not so much. Tier Limit is a terrible matchup. Forget I said that. But with a lot of like Synchro Summoning and Link Summoning and Fusion Summoning, or not Fusion Summoning, and Link Summoning and Xyz Summoning and stuff like that, mostly Synchro and Link Summoning, you're able to more effectively use like Saravis and get better advantage off of that. Really strong end board, very difficult for a lot of decks to deal with, just like Skull Guardian and a guy can just be enough sometimes, right? Sometimes it's not, but it's like, if you're able to time your negate effectively and prevent the opponent from really doing anything alongside any other, additional point of interaction, it can really be enough to just prevent the opponent from doing anything and then just clean them up on the following turn with a really large Skull Guardian that's very difficult to out. Next up, we have Dragon Link. This is basically Dragon Link with the new support from Red Eyes, and all I'm going to say is it's another combo deck that does the same thing, that loses to the same stuff. It's not really all that great. It's a little bit stronger than it was previously, but in a metagame where everyone is expecting a combo deck, playing a combo deck is not very good. And also Bystials. Yes, Bystials are kind of a boon for them, but it's also a boon against them. When everyone else is playing Bystials, it makes it pretty bad. Pearly, I think, is also fairly decent right now, but not exceptional. It's just inconsistent. That's like the biggest thing. Yes, it got Perlily back to 3, which is nice, but overall, other than that, not great. Ubell is... sorry, I clicked the wrong one. Ubell is a deck that still exists, but has the same issues as everything else. Its end board, however, is insane. Technically speaking, you could argue either Ubell or White Forest Azamina have similar end boards in terms of how powerful they are. The only difference is that for Ubell, I think that it just doesn't put as much stake into, like, back row, which means if you have a way to deal with monsters, it pretty much cooks the end board, right? So something like Droplet, etc., can really be problematic, right? That being said, I also think it's more susceptible to, like, Fuwalos and Maxi, which I think is the biggest thing, whereas White Forest Azamina has the ability to, like, stop after you, like, Silva, right? You can, like, Silva, give them a draw, and then just, like, pass on that with more hand traps. And Ubell can do something similar with the Phantom of Ubell, but that requires a little bit more of a setup and a few things here or there. I feel like it's just slightly weaker than Tier 1. I think it's solidly Tier 2. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Next up, we have more pendulum stuff. The new pendulum stuff I really just don't think is going to change much. A little bit better, but not a lot better. You're going to have a hard time realistically climbing with these, even if you are good at... actually, you probably are good at the deck if you're playing it, so there you go. Next up, Fire King. Fire King, I think, is extremely strong. Maybe better than White Forest Azamina, but maybe not quite there. The big thing about Fire King is that it doesn't lose to any one hand trap in particular. It has the ability to dodge Imperm or Veiler, or it doesn't really care too much about Droll because it can like pop and do all of that stuff after like a single search, right? It has the ability to play under like a Maxian Fualos because it can just play on the opponent's turn. It doesn't lose to like any real big like game start or like turn ender, right? Besides maybe Dimensional Shifter. So there's that. But then it also has the ability to do like this big wombo combo and end on a whole bunch of interactions, right? Which makes it really kind of this like best of both worlds style deck. It's not exceptional in the fact that you do have to see very specific cards in order to like pivot through different hand traps and stuff like that. And sometimes like an Imperm just ends your turn, as is the case with most things. But like you're more susceptible, I think, to just kind of like breaking, just due to the nature of the deck and of the cards. However, again, even if you were to break, you probably have something else after that, right? You may have like a Runic in hand, or you may have the ability to like normal summon Arvada and like have a negate on the following turn, which is like something, but it's not exceptional. Yeah, I don't know. It's very good. That's pretty much it. I think it still loses to a bunch, but it's still really good. Snake Eye, Azamina, does lose a bit of consistency, but also you could just hit it. It's that simple. You can just hit with Zombie Vampire and still do the exact same stuff that you were doing previously, except instead of sending using Beatrice to send, you just use Zombie Vampire, which basically is the same thing. And you can more or less do the exact same thing that you were doing previously with the Millennium stuff, and just do it with the Millennium stuff again. So, yeah, I really do think that this is just the best deck. It has the best of kind of everything. It really just does full combo and also has the ability to play a bajillion hand traps and also has the ability to, like, nuke an opponent's board really effectively due to a whole bunch of really high attack point monsters and, like, Flomberg and stuff like that, and just generate an insane amount of advantage and yada, yada, yada. You've heard it. Snake Eyes is still the best. I hate to say it, but yeah. Centurion did receive new support. However, even with that being said, I do not think that it is exceptional in its capacity to play against the current metagame. It's a weaker combo deck. It is a mid-range deck, which is not very good right now, because it just doesn't do enough. It's a good mid-range deck, but it's not an insane mid-range deck. Like the next deck that I'm going to talk about, which is Blue Eyes. Blue Eyes is basically Centurion, but like significantly better. I'm going to put Blue Eyes at the top of tier 2, mostly due to the fact that the Primite cards add a lot of oomph to this deck, giving you Drill Beam, which is one of the most insane cards I've ever read. Being able to negate and banish is insane. On top of that, being able to utilize your Spirit Dragons multiple times in order to go into like Crimson Dragon and do like a full combo if you really wanted to, and then on some of these insane end boards if your opponent just like doesn't hand trap you, right? However, on top of that, you also have one of the most powerful recursive trap cards in True Light, being able to consistently get you additional cards every turn. Blue Eyes is really, really well suited for that mid-range style strategy, because it does have the ability to play a slower, grindier game against a lot of these other decks, like, for example, Stun or Millennium or what have you, while also being able to play more of that combo-focused strategy against some of these other decks as well, and just kind of, like, compete in that space really, really well. A lot of that thanks to the Primite cards. Next up, we have Salamangreat, which is just, it's just worse Mathmech. It's Rogue. Actually, I might put this lower. Now, we'll put it there. Sky Striker. Now, here's the thing. If you're playing Sky Striker Tenpai, good deck. 10 out of 10. Phenomenal deck. If you're taking out the Tenpai cards, holy crap, this deck is ass. It's pretty much that simple. The problem with Sky Striker is if you were to break a board, you need a way to finish the opponent. Because if you do not finish the opponent, they draw for turn and then immediately kill you because every single one of their cards basically does the entire combo and you can't really contest that every single turn, right? So it's not like, I just have, like, zero faith in this if you're not playing the Tenpai cards. Tenpai, really solid. Not Tenpai, really bad. It's that simple. Moving on, we have some Ritual Beast stuff. Ritual Beast is just another really solid combo deck that loses to just about everything. However, it also has the ability to just combo off and immediately prevent the opponent from ever really doing anything. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's just a really, really strong combo deck. Unlike something like Mathmech, I really think that the end board for Ritual Beast is so significantly stronger that it really is more difficult to out, right? Retronari and Baguska and, you know, the guy that prevents targeting all are really powerful. It's pretty much that. On top of that, you could play, like, Protoss if you wanted to, or Eschatos or something else along those lines, and, like, cut the opponent off of an entire type or attribute or what have you. So there's that. We've already talked about Animanspader. We've already talked about you. Plant Link. Plant Link is not very good. I'm honestly, I'm gonna put it in everything else. It's just like a worse version of a lot of these other decks because it's even more susceptible to like every other hand trap under the sun, and it requires you to play really, really, really well all of the time, which is highly unlikely to happen. Just due to a myriad of other things. Like, you have to play so much better than your opponent to realistically be able to compete. Right? There's not really a gimmick to this. You just have to be better. At your combo, at your interruptions, at everything. Right? Next up, Sharks. Sharks didn't really get anything. Like, Toad being banned really cooks this deck. It kind of does stuff, right? Like, it has the ability to now more consistently get into more rank 4s, which is nice in theory, right? Like, Abyss Dweller's pretty good, and being able to end on, like, the guy, the stinging nettle jellyfish thing that I can't remember the name of for the life of me. It's the Xyz that turns everything to waters and then pops a water. Like, that is good paired with some other floodgates, but, like, there's not, it doesn't really do anything in particular that makes it stand out from any of these other decks as well. Like, why not just play Goblin Biker at that point? It's just a better Xyz deck, you know? They kind of play similar. They don't really play similarly. They kind of do. But, like, rank 3 Turbo is way better than rank 4 currently, mostly due to the fact that, like, rank 3s just have more oomph right now. Like, just go into Link Monster's forehead, because they're incredibly powerful. Yeah, I have very little faith in this deck. I don't know, someone could prove me wrong, you know, and, like, get to Master Tier super easily and super quickly and, like, showcase this incredible deck, but until I see it, I have very little faith. I could be wrong, though. This is probably the one I know maybe the least about, but I don't think it changes too much. Momento, I think, is very strong. I don't think it's insane, but I don't know. This is a weird one, because it is a big combo deck that loses to a bunch of the combo deck problems. Except for, like, it's not terrible into Fualos, which is something of note. But outside of that, like, it loses to Maxi, it loses to Droll, it loses to Nibiru, it loses to a bunch of these other things as well. I guess it doesn't necessarily lose to Nibiru, right? It also does have a ton of bricks, which is my biggest pain with this deck. Is, like, if you're playing, you know, hand trap control, basically. If you're basically trying to prevent the opponent from ever playing the game through a myriad of hand traps, having a bunch of bricks in the deck means that you have less of those hand traps to utilize, which just makes it significantly worse. Right? I don't know. You know what? I have faith in Momento. Momento's extremely good right now. I'm gonna put it above Voiceless and stuff like that. It does have the biggest problem is bricking. It's just like drawing completely dead hands, which is not that big of a deal when it comes to climbing, because it's just like, okay, chalk it up as a loss, move on. Not that big of a deal, right? So yeah, we'll put it in tier 2. Its end boards are very strong and very competent. The problem is you have to be very in tune with how this deck works, because every single card that you draw that doesn't go into the standard combo can change the combo dramatically. Having like a Gaddock in hand changes the way that you have to play out the duel. Having Akihiron in hand, having Sleepy already in hand, not being able to like start with a Dark Blade, not being able to start with an Ange-Witch, you know, it changes all of these different ways that you have to play the game quite drastically. So it makes it a lot harder to learn. But that being said, if you do learn it, it is very strong. The new stuff helps a bit. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Good end board, not insane, but that's pretty much it. Valmonica. Valmonica is bad. The new cards don't do anything, and Valmonica previously didn't do anything. It's not helped by any of the new cards. That's pretty much it. Let me know down below if you guys agree with this list. Maybe... No, that seems right. I really don't think Blue Eyes is tier 1. It could be, maybe, but I really feel like the current metagame is so high power that like Blue Eyes just isn't quite there. If these decks in particular got nerfed, most notably Azamina and Tenpai, if those two engines got nerfed, I think all 4 of these decks drop down, and more specifically this one would like pull up in its power. But other than that, I think that is pretty good. Let me know down below if you guys agree or disagree, and what your thoughts are. If I missed a deck, let me know. That's going to be it. Thank you guys so much for watching. And remember, I just realized I missed Tri-Brigade and Sprite. Both of them go into tier 3. They're actually pretty solid. They continually have been. Tri-Brigade will probably be Rogue. But Sprite, I still think, has the ability to do, like, Sprite, Fiendsmith stuff, or, like, play with some of the Ubell cards. And the end board is fairly decent. And it has the ability to play a bajillion hand traps, which is very nice. So I'd put it in tier 3, probably above, like, Branded. Anyway, that's going to be it. Thank you guys so much for watching. And remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye.